So good morning, everyone, to today's briefing with here. Okay. Good morning again, everyone. To today's briefing with Ska KELLER and Philippe LAMBERTS ahead of Friday's informal EUCO, and the one 2 weeks later. We will mainly focus on energy prices, and several other topics. But I will quickly give the floor to Philippe.
Good morning, everyone. So energy is the topic, right? I don't know what else you're talking about, but this is the one that has been with us for, well, ever since the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. And I just want to tell you, and maybe it's because I'm in a bad mood because my back hurts, but this parliament has ways to look stupid and useless in incredible ways. I remember that was a conference of presidents, not preparing this plenary, but the one before. I heard colleagues complaining that, the parliament is not co-legislator on this 122 thing. This is a scandal, and we should be part of it. This is really an insult to the only directly elected, etc. You know that. So they insist on having at least a resolution of this parliament. And we said, okay, well, maybe the best thing to do then would be to have the resolution after the proposals of the European Commission become public, so we can actually, short of being co-legislators, at least express all the things that we would like to see in the decisions. In other terms, short of legislating, at least give a clear position of the Parliament about what we want. Guess what? We are negotiating, well, we have finished the negotiations about this resolution. Now, interestingly, well, some, the left, didn't even show up except remotely. Some others, from the Social Democrats, decided that, well, they needed sleep. Another one went to negotiate in NV, this I understand, or to vote in NV, this I understand. But the other one, there were two of them, so at least one could stand in, but the other one was too tired and left hours before the end of the negotiation. We didn't hear a lot about the Liberals, and we end up with a text that basically says, okay, well, we're happy with the windfall tax. Well, you can't call it like that, as you know, but so the Parliament is happy about this windfall tax, and the Parliament is unable to say anything else. Unable. So nothing on the fact that we should, for instance, focus the investments into accelerating the transition. In that sense, the European Commission is much bolder. Unable to say that we should focus support to those who need it most. Anything social is almost gone from this resolution. But what you have there are a collection of national demands. By the way, at a moment where one big country, your country, Ska, is going solo, but like many other countries. Of course, we can focus on Germany, but I mean, most countries are going solo. So this is a moment where, if anything, the Parliament could urge for community-based solutions, right? Not, well, against national egoism, but even that is not possible. The one thing that the SND wanted above all was an explicit mention of the MidCat pipeline. That is awfully important. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. So I'm not saying that MidCat is just national. I mean, it has, of course, European ramifications, but come on. Come on. Is this what this Parliament is able to deliver? And indeed, you know, I'm proud of having been an MEP for 13 years, and this is probably the most powerful Parliament in Europe. But this Parliament, who so often complains that it doesn't have enough powers, would be well advised to use the powers it has already and to show it can really deliver. And again, to me, this is an example of the dog barking, but not really doing its job. In this case, well, watching the house and the community house and making sure that we work together. So no, I'm not happy at all, not amused. You know, I remember in that infamous Conference of Presidents, I mentioned to the colleagues, you know, this Parliament who is fighting turf wars between committees just to attribute the files linked to Repower Europe for months, right, is maybe not in the best position to claim co-decision rights, even in a normal world. That is what should happen. That is what should happen. But then again, I would expect consistency from colleagues. And if the situation is grave, then act accordingly. And don't waste yourself producing paper that no one will pay attention to, and I would say rightfully so. Thank you.
Thank you, Philippe. Ska.
Thank you. And indeed, that's going to be a big discussion. We also have a couple of other issues that I would briefly like to mention. Well, we have the resolution on Ukraine coming up, which of course will also look at the whole pipeline issue. Of course, a very interesting topic overall. We're also debating Iran, where we want to make clear that as Parliament, we're calling very clearly on Iran to stop all the violence and, well, to allow for basic human rights. Women's rights are human rights. We will also do a little photo action, which is cross-party. So really lots of groups and lots of people are involved at 11:45, if that's interesting for you, just outside the plenary, right? I also would like to draw your attention to the issue of rule of law, which we will again debate. I mean, last Strasbourg session we had the report on Hungary. Of course, unfortunately, Hungary is not the only problem, and I think it's so important to look at the rule of law. If we are planning and if we want to be a strong, united union vis-à-vis the adversaries that unfortunately exist in the world, just looking at Putin, then it's so important that we are basing ourselves on just very fundamental common values, something everyone has agreed on, and that is rule of law and democracy. So we need to be firm there also in towards our own interior as the European Union if we're wanting to speak to the outside about human rights, which we want to do, which I think is very, very important to do. Furthermore, we are planning to have a big success today, namely we're going to vote on the common charger. Officially has a more complicated title, but in the end, the big success here is that we're looking at a common charger for practically all digital devices, and that's a great success because on the one hand, it's a big nuisance for consumers, for citizens in Europe, but on the other hand, it's also a big waste issue. There's so much waste being done with all these different chargers. I'm sure you all know the problem. I'm sure you all have lots of those in your drawers, and it's important that we can reuse those things and not just produce waste just because that's creating profit for someone. And I would also like to draw your attention to another important issue, which is usually overlooked and underrated. Namely, we're having a resolution to be voted on Thursday on the whole issue of ocean governance and protection of biodiversity. We have the big UN conference coming up in December on biodiversity. The oceans are a big part of this planet, and biodiversity there is often overlooked and underrated. And this resolution will be very good if all goes well, calling for a moratorium on deep-sea mining, for example, and looking into the biodiversity-rich areas we have in the Antarctic and protection of the Arctic region as well, and calling also for a protection of 30% of the areas on the seas, which is also something we want on land. The Commission has been calling for that also in their strategy, so we need to make that happen. The EU needs to go ahead because apart from the energy crisis which we have, we should not forget about the climate crisis and going along with that, the biodiversity crisis. So lots of crises, but luckily we know what to do. Some of those crises, I mean, there's crises where you don't really know what to do and it's all coming towards you without anyone knowing in advance that this is going to happen. On other crises, you know they're going to happen. You know what to do about it. It just needs doing. And especially when we're looking at the climate crisis, the solutions to that luckily help us also in other areas such as the energy crisis. So we need to do whatever we can So yeah, that's a bit of a run through. There was also going to be other interesting issues, a hearing on the Pegasus spyware, for example, that shouldn't go unmentioned, a big thing on Thursday in the PEGA committee, if you want to have a look at that. And with all of these different issues, I'll leave it to your questions.
Thanks, Ska. Yes, please, first question from inside the room. You can also ask questions from outside the room remotely, and please quickly indicate your name and media you work with.
Bonjour, Emmanuel Beretta, Le Point. J'ai une question pour Monsieur Lamberts. Je ne comprends pas très bien vos remarques parce que Monsieur Séjourné, qui vous a précédé de quelques minutes, nous a dit que les propositions Renew avaient été incluses dans cette résolution énergie. Je les cite: taxation des superprofits, réduction de la demande, accélération des renouvelables, plafonnement du prix du gaz importé par gazoduc, appel à l'achat commun de gaz. Enfin, j'ai l'impression qu'il y avait beaucoup de choses dans cette résolution et vous nous dites qu'il n'y a rien. Est-ce que vous pouvez être un peu plus explicite?
D'abord, parler de taxer les surprofits, ben, c'est déjà dans la proposition qui a été adoptée, donc c'est un peu la mouche du coche, quoi. C'est gentil, on dit après coup, ouais, ok, c'est très bien les gars, continuez. Plafonner les prix du gaz, mais comme vous dites, les prix du gaz qui viennent par gazoduc, or, il ne vous aura pas échappé qu'une bonne partie du gaz, et la partie la plus chère du gaz que nous importons, nous arrive par bateau. Pourquoi est-ce que les libéraux ont à ce point insisté sur le fait que c'est juste le gaz qui arrive par gazoduc? On va dire, oui, mais c'est pour accommoder le fait que les bateaux peuvent se rediriger ailleurs et que les gazoducs pas. Oui, maintenant, ceci dit, on peut toujours tourner le robinet d'un gazoduc, mais très franchement, est-ce que ça règle le problème? Non, évidemment que ça ne règle pas le problème. Si on en arrive à plafonner les prix, ce qui pour nous doit être une solution de dernier ressort, parce que si on est sérieux dans la réduction de la demande, je dis bien sérieux, parce que moi, quand j'entends les amis de Stéphane Séjourné, en particulier celui qui habite un palais à Paris, là j'ai oublié son nom, mais enfin, vous voyez de qui je parle, dit qu'essentiellement, l'austérité énergétique, c'est pour les ménages. D'accord? Alors, sa première ministre, au MEDEF, elle dit le contraire, et ce n'est pas plus mal. Mais qu'il faut que les ménages se serrent la ceinture, mais pas l'économie, hein, puisque quand Beaune vient dire il faudrait peut-être quand même regarder un peu cette consommation emblématique que sont les avions d'affaires, il se fait tout de suite, évidemment, taper dessus. Donc, on a bien compris que quand Stéphane Séjourné parle de la limitation de la consommation, ce n'est pas la réduction du gaspillage d'énergie par notre système économique. Donc, de nouveau, il faut être précis dans ce qu'on dit. Et dès qu'on veut, dans la négociation de la résolution, rentrer dans le dur, pas rester à des grandes déclarations générales qui ne mangent pas de pain, alors là, curieusement, ça bloque. Curieusement, ça bloque. Et donc, en effet, cette résolution, elle est parfaitement inutile. Je ne dis pas que tout ce qu'elle dit est stupide, je dis simplement qu'elle aura zéro influence sur la suite des opérations et que donc, je pense que le Parlement aurait pu être beaucoup plus clair sur ce qu'il attend, comme je le dis, sur le fait que les solutions nationales ne sont pas des solutions, qu'il faut vraiment des solutions collectives, sur le fait qu'il faut vraiment accélérer le pas sur la réduction de notre consommation énergétique, mettre l'accent, et j'attire votre attention sur cette méga enquête que Le Monde fait régulièrement, ils ont publié ça aujourd'hui, qui montre que les 2 tiers des Français sont d'accord de faire des efforts considérables, mais surtout que ces efforts soient justes, ça c'est la condition. Et donc c'est toute la question de la justice sociale dans la demande des efforts. Et ça, notre résolution aurait pu marteler ce clou-là, en disant il faudrait renforcer, par exemple, SURE, ce mécanisme qui a été mis en place à l'occasion du Covid. Tout ça, on aurait pu le dire. On ne le dit pas. Et quand on parle d'aller mobiliser les 20 milliards d'argent du marché ETS, vous savez, la Market Stability Reserve, et nous, on veut dire il faut mettre le paquet sur la transition énergétique, qu'est-ce que la résolution dit? C'est, oui, OK, il faut dépenser cet argent, en ce compris sur les renouvelables. Enfin, je veux dire, donc, il faut aller voir dans les détails. Donc, je comprends tout à fait que mon collègue Stéphane ait envie de dire que tout ça est formidable. Je pense que ça ne résiste pas vraiment à l'analyse, c'est tout.
Merci, Philippe. Are there any other questions? Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Laura Zornoza from EFA. I have two questions for Ska, actually. The first of all is if you could, the first of the two of them is if you could update us on your succession process, what the calendar is, and if there's been any progress. And the second one, I would like to hear from you on the German aid package question, seeing that Greens are a member of the German government. What is your position, and what are the Greens doing in Berlin? Has their role been on this issue? Thank you.
Thanks a lot for the questions. The one on my succession, I wanted to address in the end, like it was so nice to be with you here every Tuesday, Strasbourg, but from now, Philippe will have to do it with someone else. And we're going to vote on my succession on October 12th, which is next Wednesday. The deadline for applications is today, end of business, I think, something like this. So we'll have to wait another day to see who the applicants will be. But I'm sure it's going to be someone very fantastic who's going to be the new co-chair of the group. So yes, that's the plan for the moment. So next Wednesday we will vote, the whole group votes on the candidates that we will have received by the end of today. About the German aid package, I believe, is very good and very well, and we very much support it. Of course, it was a very necessary step because, I mean, we had this whole question about who's going to pay for the necessary rescuing of energy companies that have been doing wrong calculations in the past. Because also the previous German government has, as you know, German governments for many years have been totally buying into, oh, we get cheap Russian gas and we put everything, all our eggs in the basket of Russian gas, and everything else is going to be under the table. So we're faced with this situation. So the question was, who's going to have to pay for those companies that are basically too big to fail? Because if they fail, then we are running out of energy, and it's going to be very, very difficult, especially for the lowest income households, but everyone really. There was a lot of to and fro, let's say, in the government, and in the end, the plan now is to have that, what's it called in English? Well, to have the fund with 200 billion euros in order to make sure that this is happening, but also that there is support for households and also small and medium enterprises, which are very much in need because, you know, if the bakery has a energy bill that is skyrocketing, you know, they're going to go bankrupt even though they have such a very healthy business model. So we very much support that, but I very much agree that we need European efforts as well. Right now we have national solutions, and they are very important for the national level, but we also need to have the European solution. We need to have the European solidarity, because certainly Germany is a country that can, let's say, afford it to take up 200 billion euros, but many other countries don't have that possibility. And that is something where we need to see European action, where we would like to also see a European solidarity fund. We have had that experience with the recovery fund. Yes, no one would have thought that the new crisis, the next crisis would be just around the corner, but voila, here we are. That's the reality we're facing. So we need to have a European solidarity mechanism. We need to have a European mechanisms when it comes to buying gas, for example, but also when it comes to providing support for households and, yes, also SMEs. So that's what we're arguing for, and that's what we continue to argue for on any level that you can think of. That's also something we're going to amend to the energy resolutions. We're preparing a couple of amendments with that regard in order to beef it up, and then let's see what's going to happen with that.
So I don't see any questions online. One last question, please.
I would like to ask a follow-up. My name is Anna Vandensky from Europe Diplomatic on energy, because the US Secretary Tony Blinken said that the attack on pipelines, Nord Stream, is a tremendous opportunity. Do you share this outlook?
I don't know if he said that. I'm sure it's somewhere on the Russian media. I really don't know what he said that. I think it's a really crazy situation that we have an attack on pipelines, no matter whom those pipelines belong to. There's certain, I mean, obviously that wasn't an accident. Investigations need to happen, which is currently, of course, being made difficult by more gas, it seems to be pumped in there. But it's clear that the European Union also needs to think about how to protect vital Infrastructure, I mean, that's something we've been already saying for a while. We need to look, first of all, how do we safeguard infrastructure? That's with regards energy, but that's also with regards to digital infrastructure, but also hospitals and so on and so forth. There is a big job that we need to do there in terms of civil protection. And also, well, that's a larger discussion about also with regards to investments into vital infrastructure happening here in the European Union. Again, that's a discussion we've been trying to put forward for many years already, but it just shows how important it is that we need to be aware of dangers that are happening. We need to be prepared, and we should not become dependent on one energy supplier. And we need to be a bit more self-sufficient, and for that we have the renewables, we have a solution, but of course it needs big investments, and of course it's not going to happen all overnight. We should have started earlier, but voila, now we have to do it, and we have to do it full speed. Thank you.
Who said that this was a good thing?
Tony Blinken, in the official speech, he said that it's a Nord Stream pipeline attack gives a tremendous opportunity, he said, and it was quoted all over in American press. I can bring you the links.
I didn't see it, but certainly I will tell you one thing. This is the works of a state power, because I know of no private criminal consortia who have submarines and the means to blow up pipelines under 70 meters of water. And whoever did that committed an act of, I would even say, eco-terrorism, because when you look at the amount of CH4 that is in those pipelines, as you may know, methane is much more toxic in terms of climate than CO2 is. Of course, it is less remnant, but its impact on climate is much higher. So whoever did that acted in a totally irresponsible way. That is certain.
Thank you everyone. Thank you for coming. And those who want to follow up on the Pegasus spyware hearing with our EFA MEPs, Jordi Solé and Diana Riba, can do so on Thursday from 9 o'clock on. Have a good afternoon.